Oh, well, hello there. Welcome to the Starfish Cast. My name is Nico. I'll be your host today. Starfish Cast is all about showcasing the human talent behind Konsensus Network Starfish organization. And to that end, today we have a special guest, Gonzalo from the Spanish team, and also an avid typesetter, a really valuable player in the Starfish organization. Gonna go through how he got into Bitcoin, how he got into Konsensus, and yeah, we're basically gonna jam and have a nice casual chat. Welcome, Gonzalo. Good to have you. How are you, man?
Thank you, Nico. How are you? Have you been working tirelessly
Yeah, hardly work. I mean, working hard.
That's it. So yeah, as you said, I started in Konsensus Network as a mere translator. I just wanted to do my part to contribute to society and to spread the word, specifically about Saifeddin Ammou's book, The Fiat Standard. After reading the Bitcoin Standard, I felt like, well, I got orange peel, and that was the beginning of a long journey that ended with, well, not ended. It's continuing, but this journey has now took me to being the project manager for Spanish titles at Konsensus. So yeah, it's been a hell of a ride.
That's cool. So how did you originally get interested in Bitcoin? Like that must have been, did you read the Bitcoin Standard or was it before that even? How did that happen?
To be honest, it's been a while since I've been into Austrian economics. Ever since I was, let's say a teenager, I always had an aversion towards socialist politicians, or at least in Argentina, the most socialist ones. I didn't really recognize that the opposite party were just as much as socialist as the most prominent, let's say. So I wanted to find like answers, and well, I wanted to find the truth about the world, and that's why I always did a lot of research on economics and such, and that's how I ended up getting into Austrian economics. And the first time I remember the first time I heard about Bitcoin, it was in university. As a side note, I work as a software engineer, and I heard of the first time I heard of Bitcoin. It was a talk in my university about it, and I almost feel like I also heard about it before in a YouTube video, but I didn't really pay attention to it. I think it was 2017, and yeah, it was getting popular, and they were talking about it, and I didn't really understand what was the point behind it. I think by the end of the conference of that talk, I realized, so no one is controlling this. This is interesting, and I recognized like the pattern of like private money. It's like, oh, this is private money. But I didn't know about the cap in the 21 million bitcoins, so I wasn't really convinced at that moment. It was just a curious thing to me. I think it was lucky, because I bet, I'm not sure about the exact timing of that talk, but I bet it was during the peak of 2017. So I'm grateful that I got into Bitcoin later when it was cheaper. Either way, I didn't have much money, so yeah. But the moment it really dawned on me that Bitcoin was the answer to, let's say, fix the world was when as I said, after researching about Austrian economics, I was really adamant on pushing returning to the gold standard. And at some point I come to research more about Bitcoin, and I saw and I read about the the cap on the 21 million, and it was like, okay, this is looking better. This is not like nerds, as a lot of people say, uh, nerds money. This is well thought. It's like, it's not something that just arises out of like trial and error. It's like it's a well thought out system. So yeah, what it was where I was going with that. Well, the point is that I found out about that, and my only concern, the only critiques I found about it, well, the only most of the critiques I found about Bitcoin was about the transaction capacity. How many, how are we supposed to use this as a global medium of exchange if the transaction output is so low, and as an, let's say, as an Austrian follower, of the as someone who read and about Austrian economy, I was like, yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, you could totally run a base layer banking with Bitcoin, and let other like let banks be the providers of well, you get my point. To use it
The
as
banks are like the service providers of and the base settlement network.
that's right. And then I just Googled that, and I came up with Saifedian's book, and that's how I really got into it, because before that it was only like superficial knowledge, and I didn't really know much about how safe was the how safe the cryptography was, or how well aligned were the incentives keep it secure and, let's say, honest. So yeah, it's not like I had a great idea, but I'm somewhat proud that I came upon Saifedian's book wanting to know about that premise. That's the premise of his book.
One thing that strikes me really interesting is that you're a software engineer, but you came to Bitcoin from the economic side, Austrian economic side. That's really interesting, and to some extent political side. I guess being from Argentina has something to do with that, because probably you were looking for some answers to that before Bitcoin. For me, it's like, I think it is nerd money. I mean, still, like, it's quite a nerdy thing to be interested in magic internet money, to be completely fair and accurate. And that's how I got into Bitcoin. I didn't know anything about economics. I didn't care. I was just interested in the technology. And what you said about the transaction capacity, stuff like that, they actually made me dismiss Bitcoin, amongst other things, like maybe we hacked and stuff like that. For a long time, I thought that it's going to be a real problem, and that was because I didn't have the economics background that you did. Like you said, immediately you realized that it doesn't need to happen on the base layer. Like, all the transactions are not, just like in gold standard, they're not going to happen in the settlement layer. And now we have Lightning Network, which has been in development for like around 5 years already, and great development have been made in the layer 2 solution. So there you go. Same way as fiat was a layer 2 solution for gold, moving gold, and the Lightning Network is the same. That's the same for Bitcoin. So great foresight there. That's impressive. And then, from there you got into Bitcoin and into Bitcoin books. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, from there on, I'm just repeating whatever it's already been, whatever has already been said. It's like, I'm not going to pretend I am a great Bitcoin researcher or whatever. And I just try to stay humble and listen to podcasts. I started listening to podcasts, reading books, and getting to know more about this. And yeah, I remember that Safe was quite important in that regard. But also people like who are, I don't think they are as popular now, like Andreas Antonopoulos. You know, he had great videos about like what if this happens in Bitcoin. And yeah, it made you feel more secure about uh, putting money on it, in it.
Yeah, safety has been praised a lot in this show as well, and yeah, has to be mentioned again. Has had huge impact in all of our work and our lives, and obviously, Konsensus Network wouldn't probably have happened without Bitcoin Standard. That's how we got started. So definitely worth to mention, and huge kudos for him for writing that book. I wouldn't say like, it's not necessarily the best Bitcoin book out there, if you know what I mean. It's just happens to be extremely well positioned book with, all those kind of like nuggets of information, and the way he tied them together and made it make sense, so that the things that we kind of already knew, at least for me, suddenly, the pieces locked in and the picture became clear. So I think in that it's a very, very good book indeed. And by the way, the fiat standard that you mentioned, I think we're clear on making the audiobook of that. I know that you're interested in working on that as well. So that's going to happen at some point. That's going to be cool. What else can you tell about kind of like the Starfish organization? Like what's your experience? Like when you got in, how the work gets done, try to get a little bit of a unique perspective from within. How is it to work in kind of like this Bitcoin leaderless, Starfish, chaotic organization?
I'm just going to forgive you for saying that Safety's book is not the best Bitcoin book, but okay. In my opinion, it is, but
All right, let me clarify myself, so I don't want to offend anybody. Like, it's a great book. It's just that, it's not really a Bitcoin book, right? It's a money book.
right.
It's money and economics book. Like when I grabbed it first time, and I thought I'm going to read a Bitcoin book. It wasn't. It was a full education about the history of money and Austrian economics, and that pushed me to the whole Austrian rabbit hole. So, a very valuable book. Just, my point is just that there's better books to explain Bitcoin from technological perspective, such as, I don't know, inventing Bitcoin, for example.
Yes, you're right. I'm biased because coming from an independent, let's say, Austrian background. I really liked the book, and I was thrilled. It didn't matter to me that I don't remember in which chapter he mentioned Bitcoin for the first time, but it was very late.
It was chapter 8, I believe. That's the digital money chapter. So the first 7 chapters is not even about Bitcoin at all.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, returning to my beginning in Konsensus, I'm noticing that I'm coming out as a very huge fanboy of Safety's fanboy, but I swear I'm trying to dial it down. So yeah, I think I sent a cold email to Saifedian after reading the Bitcoin standards, because I knew he was writing a new book. I was eager to help him with whatever, his podcasts or maybe his courses. If I can get to translate his book, I was going to do it. And he connected me to you. It seems like you already had that idea before me. You won. But yeah, luckily, I was lucky that you got in earlier, because you had your whole operation, your operation going, and it was like formal. It was for real. It was like I think I thought I was going to do some of the translation, and maybe it would end up as a ebook pirated by some, and the way it ended up was so much better. I mean, still pirated, I suppose, but at least we got to see I got to see a physical copy of it translated. Yeah, at the beginning, I was a newbie. I didn't know. I know how professional translators work. I just knew that I knew some English and some Spanish, so I guess I could do it. And yeah, I remember we had long conversations with you, Nico, just because I didn't really understand the whole operation. And yeah, I was curious about like the other projects and all that. But yeah, with time, I realized I was the most neurotic member of the translation team. So that made me a great candidate for being the editor. And I think in the beginning, I wanted to be the editor, but I felt I wasn't good enough because I was just a newbie. I just wanted to contribute. So I remember we had to book which chapters we were going to translate. So I booked I think I booked the longest ones, and it was three of us. And yeah, I got most of the chapters, but it was fair, it's like, there was it was obvious that one of us would end up translating more. Well, since I got earlier there, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And by the time we ended, a lot of them left, and I ended up doing most of the work. But yeah, I'm grateful for the people that stayed because they made great contributions to the book. And in the process of translating that book and being the editor, I learned a lot about how to manage like a project and how to like deal with people, but not in a bossy way, because it's not like we were getting a monthly salary. I mean, we were doing it because it was our passion project. So yeah, it was going to be hard to make. I mean, it was impossible to force someone that didn't want to join in. It was just making sure that if you're in, you're in, and if you're not, please let me know because it makes it so much easier for me. So yeah, and that was our first book. Yeah, and from then on, I just kept translating, and I noticed that the more people we got in a project, the less productive we were. So I think we had a conversation about this, and I suggested that we had people take over the role of editor for each book so that they own what they translated. The previous system had this problem of having many translators that did let's say, that might do a regular or a mediocre job, and and other translators that did it really well, but they were not. No one was really incentivized to do their best, But if you are the editor and you own the book at the end of the day, you are going to translate your best. You're going to do your best, and that's why I decided to manage Spanish books like that after that book, to make other people uh, let other people assume the role of editors, teach them how to be how to assume that role, and let them own the book. If that means that maybe let's say a natively a Spanish someone from Spain will use more Spanish words, like native Spanish words, not, let's say, Argentinian or from Latin America, that's fine because he's the editor, and that's the way he owns the book, and he does his best. If I were to tell him, no, you should translate this way, let's say, because I'm selfish, I just say the Argentinian way, he wouldn't be doing his best. He wouldn't be so passionate about it, at least in my opinion. And yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that's kind of like the key. I wouldn't say a problem, but yeah, something that I've noticed that once you can see when somebody takes ownership of a project. That's like, I love to see that. Like, that's what we need in every project. When there's nobody raising to the occasion and taking ownership of the project, kind of like this role of a project manager. Projects take long months. The longest ones we've done is probably like 18 months before publishing, because nothing happens. Like this is what the like leaderless organizations kind of like a bit of a downside, right? I mean, because it's not clear. And by the way, I have to say, like, this is the first time I've heard anybody describe our organization formal. I don't think it's that formal, but yeah, I get what you mean. Like, at least we had an operation that had been running for quite a while. We've experimented with the model, so it wasn't like it was the first project that we did. So maybe that's what you meant. But yeah, this is something that I don't consider it as a downside or a problem necessarily. It's just a trade-off that you have. I mean, like you said, we don't pay anybody. We can't offer a salary that is competitive in translation industry. Yeah, for two reasons. The first reason is the quality concern. Well, the first reason is really the cost concern, because we don't have the money and we're not profitable yet. But the even more important reason, in my opinion, is the quality. Like you said, once you take ownership of the project, you put your name and your reputation at stake. You want to do your best, and that's kind of like the power that we the trade-off that you get from using a Starfish organization. Sometimes it's chaotic, slow. Some messages get lost in translation and people don't communicate well, and it's a process. But once you make it work, you get really efficient, really top quality products at almost no upfront cost. And this is the sweet spot we want to hit with every project. It doesn't always work, but eventually people like you, they tend to step up in all these language regions, and it's a wonderful sight to behold. To be honest, like it's humbling to see like how this kind of like crazy vision that I had after reading that book, Starfish and Spider, that I can't stop talking about. I had this vision of a Starfish organization, and this is, by the way, the third one that I tried to start, and the first one that has been successful. So finally, I have some validation to these ideas and these methods that it can be done, and it has been done, and it's only going to get better and stronger. So yeah, thanks for being a big part of that. And to that end, maybe we can also talk about your other roles. Like, translation is not the only thing that you do anymore in Konsensus, right? One of the most important things that is very close to my heart is the typesetting. I know typesetting doesn't sound like much to anybody, or it's kind of boring. It's basically the job that is the most thankless, because if a typesetter does their work well, nobody notices because the book reads so wonderfully. There's no problems with the flow. There's no issues with the margins. The fonts are correct and all the gaps are right. Nothing bothers you. So then nobody notices that a typesetter did a good job. So maybe talk a little bit about that, because that's one of my favorite things about making books.
Yeah, you're right. Thankfully, it's something I didn't have to learn on my own. You were there to provide the tools and the patience, to teach me the basics of it. Yeah, I instantly liked doing typesetting, because it's such a, I think it's similar to developing front-end apps or applications for mobile, coming from a developer's perspective, but because of how quickly you can see how your code changes the look of things, and how easy it is. It's like, it's not like it's sometimes it can get hard sometimes, but it's so, when you know what you're doing, it can be so easy to just change the style of the whole book. And you can, and I never had that power with, let's say, Google Documents or Word documents. That I think I wrote my thesis my dissertation in Google Docs, and I cared about making it pretty, but I, s- I never, and I did put the effort, but I never really liked the end result. And that didn't happen when I started typesetting books for Consensus. It's like, yeah, you have all the control and you make it look as you want. You need to put in the proof of work, because sometimes a minor typesetting error might take you hours. And yeah, you should, uh, as I think Tivo said, you sometimes you just need to stop and maybe not ignore it, but find a workaround that doesn't include that pretty little detail that you want in your book, and just do something else.
Yeah, sometimes there's still my dirty hacks from the early days that are transported to the new fork templates, and they cause problems. But yeah, it's a process. And yeah, by the way, it's worth mentioning that we use LaTeX for the typesetting. So that's like meant for mainly technical publications, actually, such as Satoshi's white paper that was done in LaTeX as well. So we also did the white paper translation in Finnish using LaTeX, and we do all of our books, most of our books, unless the book has a lot of graphics and stuff, then we might use InDesign. But majority of the books is done in LaTeX. And for those who don't know, it has been in development for I think 40 years. One of the oldest tools for making publications, and in a position to Google Docs or Microsoft Word or Pages or any of these traditional word processors. They are what we call, what you see is what you get. So you work on the document and all the time you see what you're working on, and that's the end result. LaTeX doesn't work like that. You actually compile a code. So what you mean is what you get. That's LaTeX. So like you said, like you have full control, in good and in bad, because it can be tricky to resolve some issues, and it involves a lot of Googling and trial and error. But once you find those correct words to tell the compiler how to exactly make the document, it will be perfect every time. And then you can replicate the template and fork it to another book, and then just change a few things. And this, I think, has streamlined quite a bit of our production, because we can just take an existing book template, fork it, and then just change the key details to customize the template.
I think, coming back to what you were saying previously, it's funny that yeah, I always thought of Consensus as something formal, and it was like, I laughed when you said we are amateur professionals. Was it
Professional amateurs?
professional amateurs? Well, the other day I told Thibaut that I don't know what we were talking about. Yeah, we incorporated like some structure to the organization by using some software to create boards and tasks, be more organized with the at least at the beginning with the Spanish projects. And it's like, yeah, the professional amateurs are, yeah, I mean, we're going the other way around. It's like we're not professionals, but we are only beginning, you know?
Yeah. And it's funny because like anything that we develop in the company, it's done with the starfish mentality. So it all stems from the fact that there's not really traditional leadership hierarchy, and there's no salary. I think the key is that there's no salary for anybody. So there's no expectation that we can impose on people. So we must rely on everybody identifying their specific skill sets and working on what interests them the most. So I don't even know what are all the developments that are happening, because all the teams, they kind of like work on what they feel that is the most important part. And a lot of good stuff has come from there. Like all of the features that we add to our books and our websites and everything is a product of the collective starfish mind or hive mind. that is comprised of individuals acting on their own personal interests. And that's one of the big strengths of a Starfish organization.
Yeah, it almost feels like this is what the DeFi people dream of, you know? It's like this is what they meant, but they wouldn't be able to achieve it through crypto, blockchain, and all that crap, you know? It's like this is the way to do it.
Yeah, it's all talk about these things and to mask the same old protocol of the fiat mentality of moving somebody else's money into your pocket one way or another by using these smokes and mirrors and double talk and fancy words and piggybacking on the terminology of Bitcoin. And well, in our organization, nothing works without proof of work. So people actually have to do the work, and we rely on them, the people alone, to do that. I don't have any desire to impose my will on anybody. It's more like, here's what we've been working with, and these are the tools, and what do you think? What do you think you can do with this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that petition to change Bitcoin's code to make it more environmentally friendly, supposedly, yeah, it's like, don't you know it's an open source project? Open a pull request and wait for the approvals. It's like, yeah, try to merge it to whatever repository, and yeah, try to. The real thing is try to make people run your code, your version of the code.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you make something that is clearly better and more efficient, there's no need. There's no need for any kind of voting or discussion or permission asking. It's just it's obvious. So just do it. What are your like future projections on this kind of like Bitcoin almost circular economy and working in Bitcoin in opposed to working in fiat? Maybe that's something that we can also talk about, because you have a fiat job still, right?
Yes.
Like most of the people that are working with us, because the bills must be paid, and as mentioned many times, we don't really have salaries, not yet anyway. So how do you see kind of that, like this whole exit fiat thing, and what would you like to do?
I always say jokingly that I have a fiat job, but I like being a software engineer. I like coding. I like what I do, but yeah, it's just that it's not Bitcoin related. I would say, maybe to be fair, it's not like when we say that's a fiat job, meaning that it wouldn't exist without fiat. My job would probably will definitely exist without fiat. But yeah, it's not. You couldn't blame me for not being as passionate about it. If it's like, it's not like I like translating too, but I like coding more. But if the translation project is about Bitcoin, I am more passionate about it.
But if you could choose, like to work as a software developer for a Bitcoin project and get paid in sats, wouldn't you be interested in that?
Yes, sure. That's the end goal, I guess. But I think I have a long career ahead of me. I just need to find the right time to do it. I feel like I would be risking it too much when in reality I could stay at my regular job and just stack more sats, But yeah, it's something I contemplate all the time. It's not like I'm rejecting Bitcoin, the like positions as a developer in projects related with Bitcoin all the time. It's not like I'm getting it. That's the thing. And less so in a bear market like this one, but I don't care about that.
Yeah, bear markets are great for building, drowns out the noise, and only the proof of work people are the ones that remain. And yeah, there's something to be said about stacking sats. That's great. Like I have nothing against people having a so-called fiat job just to accumulate fiat to turn into Bitcoin. I mean, that seems like a pretty good bet at this point in time when we're transitioning towards maybe something that we envision kind of like this Bitcoin driven economy where we can actually start earning sats from different streams of different projects, which Konsensus would be one of those, and maybe that some development projects and stuff like that, and then slowly transition into being less dependent on the fiat paycheck. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. So, but yeah, it's a long road ahead of us, a lot of work to get there. But yeah, that's at least what I'm working for every day, to try to reach that position, and also to help other people to reach that position. So the mission goes beyond simply educating people about Bitcoin. It's also about enabling people to transition into Bitcoin economy, and also like, you know, offering our books to be bought with Bitcoin. That's a big part of it. Showing merchants the way. Like 30% of our shop sales are in Bitcoin already, which to me it's already quite good. I'm quite happy with that number. But 60% is still fiat. So in that sense, you could make a case that we are a fiat company as well, in the literal term. But of course, I mean, you can't really put a value on the infrastructure and the library that we are building, because it's impossible to say what the true implications of that are. And I think they're going to be probably much more significant than we can surmise here. Well, we're just doing our best, I guess, doing what we like, and see where it goes.
That's right. Maybe returning to your point about being an Argentinian. Yeah, I don't know if you heard, but we won the World Cup. That was good. Yeah, I just think like the current government, socialist one, is very lucky. It's like they are developing the worst crisis in Argentinian history. I mean, it's going to happen anytime soon. And they get this joyful moment for the people out of random, like pure coincidence. And yeah, it's like, we don't really, I don't really feel, maybe I'm biased because of the city I live in, but we don't really see this sense of dread, you know? And yeah, but the numbers do reflect that. I mean, I think we are having like 50% inflation, and at the minimum, you know, annually. Yeah, it's not like it's getting better. It's not like, well, this is not something most people would agree on, but it's not like the politicians are getting more financially conservative. It's like they're spending more and more, they're printing more in whatever way, like, you know, it's like, it's not like literal printing, but yeah, it's tough. But I think the good thing about that is that us Argentinians, I believe we are great. I was talking about this with my girlfriend the other day. We are great speculators because we live through so many hyperinflations and bad moments, let's say bad times, that yeah, it has a dark side. The ones that survived, we must be at least somewhat good at adapting, you know, and foreseeing, like planning for the future inflation, you know. Yeah, I think I don't really have specific numbers. I'm not into politics anymore, but I think the Argentinian currency has degraded in value throughout its history. Something of the on the likes of 13 orders of magnitude, something in those lines. It's like that. It's 10 to the 13th power. It's like at the point in this, at this moment, Argentinians saving dollars, and they don't really care about the CPI being high. Let's say we don't consider that high. It's perfectly fine compared to our bullshit currency. So yeah, it's in a way we will be satisfied with having dollars, let's say, as a currency. But there's a lot of people who saw the trend, saw how politicians rob us of our wealth through inflation, and they went ahead of that, and they are into Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of people following Austrian economics recently, and yeah, there is a libertarian party that arised. I don't really follow politics. I believe they all get corrupted in the end, so I don't care. But at least you can see that there's somewhat of an awakening. I don't know, maybe in 10 years they go all red, back to red, but like the whole country back to voting socialist leaders as always. But yeah, at least this is what Bitcoin provides. It's like the escape for libertarians, so that we libertarians don't need to argue anymore, and we don't need to convince anyone anymore. It's like we just do our thing, and the market will do its thing, and yeah, it will be just like gold.
The market will be the final judge in a free market society, and I guess like that's the wet dream of libertarians that we kind of want to see. Unfortunately, reality and history does provide clues to us that something terrible must happen to people before some kind of awakening happens, or revolt, or people demand options. And I mean, just the fact that US dollar, or even euro can be hard currency to some people in the world, it's quite an appalling vision. If you think about, like, Bitcoiners often talk about dollar being in hyperinflation soon. So imagine if that's your hard currency, like what kind of a situation is that? I mean, or euro. Like I made a video. I remember I made a video in 2019, the early days of Konsensus Network, and I was still in Finland. And we used to have this cool thing called €1 cheeseburgers from McDonald's, one of my favorites. And I was very offended by the fact that they raised the price to 110. So I made a video about it, and this whole rant about inflation and how this is so bad, and obviously nothing compared to Argentina or any other countries with severe inflation. I mean, I was lucky to be able to use euros at least. But I just found out today that now it's €2. And that was 4 years ago when I made that video. So, I mean, it's not that great. I mean, it's the hardest currencies of the planet are quite bad, quite weak. So yeah, I'm kind of afraid that there must be, before this kind of awakening happens, and we can kind of like, in a way, Bitcoin affords us that optionality to opt out, but it does not afford us the optionality to opt out of the reaction that other people are going to have to the poor situation that they are in. Like, we may be able to bail ourselves out, but the calamity and the collapse around us, I don't think we are able to insulate ourselves from the effects of that. So that kind of like it's a little bit of a scary thing to think about. Certainly, I would hope that people would wake up, wise up. But like you said, the soccer thing, like, people are very eager to grab any opportunity of feeling happiness and feeling content about the situation. Basically, circus and bread, which is like the age-old trick of keeping people happy when things go to the shitter. And the inconvenient truths have never been in favor of the people, never in the world history. And I don't think this time is any different. What is in favor of people forever is the comforting lies. So whatever ever gets you through the night to fight another day, that's the go-to answer. And a lot of people are not willing to do the proof of work, not willing to face the personal responsibility of actually learning about these things. And that's a big hurdle. And that's, I guess, where we can try to provide some answers. But you can't really wake up a person who wants to stay asleep, right? I mean, they're just going to get annoyed with you and aggressive towards you if you try to do that. So the next best thing is to make the information at least accessible. And that's where, translation work comes into play. Having this knowledge available. So when something bad does happen and people are looking for those options, at least they can be educated at that point. But it's up to everybody on their own. It's not up to us to chuck this idea down their throats when they're not ready to face it.
I think good ideas must survive. There's no other way. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for great ideas surviving and winning over not so good ideas, let's say. But yeah, let's just hope.
Yeah, let's focus on the positive things. The report is taking a dark turn.
I think it's more, it's not productive to think a lot about the downside, about how dark or how badly it could go if, let's say, people keep voting corrupt politicians and letting them print and spend money like it's free, and it's not. But I think, as I said, good ideas survive, and this is where I became, I always consider myself a libertarian, but when I encountered the term agorist, I think I identify more with that term. It's like a libertarian that doesn't want to force it on others. He just wants to do his own thing, even if it means using black markets and going against the government, It's you gotta do what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I identify a lot with agorism as well. And I call myself an ANCAP consensualist or something to that effect, which is pretty close to what you say there. We must defend other people's right to make incorrect decisions, in our opinion, and make bad decisions and carry the full responsibility and weight of those decisions, and not try to interject, because that will make us no better than any other interventionist politicians. So all these politics, libertarian parties, or whatever you want to call yourself, in the end, it's just a different brand of rulers that are going to impose rules on others. And that's not something I want to see. So this has been a wonderful talk. Thank you for joining, Gonzalo.
Thank you for
Do you have any final closing remarks? Maybe tell people if they want to contact you or follow you on Twitter or find out more about you.
I guess I'm going to use this opportunity to shield my lightning node. My alias is Gonan Edoawa if you want to connect to me and provide me with some inbound liquidity. It was more of a joke. I mean, I'm running my lightning node, but I'm barely profitable, but it's not like I depend on it. It's not my, let's say, my business. But
I mean, I guess you could run it as a business, at least in theory, but it's quite heavily competed, and I don't think running a routing node is not yet maybe a serious line of business. It's more like something to support the network and most of all to learn how Lightning Network works. That's why I set up the Konsensus node myself. I had some help, of course, from more tech savvy people, but I wanted to do most of it myself, including the channel balancing and all that, just as a learning experience. And I highly recommend it to anybody, really, even if you're not that into tech, just to understand how it actually works. And once you understand how Lightning Network and Bitcoin works, then it becomes so much easier to explain to people why it's an important and interesting technology to pay attention to. So, do the work. I recommend it.
Maybe I should also do a shout out to Alberto and Dr. Jones, who belong to the Spanish team. Also calling. I think there's more people, but they are lower. And they have been helping me a lot with all the Spanish projects. I think the three of them Alberto edited 2 books already. He has done a great job, and I'm glad to have met him. He's a really interesting person. And the same goes for Dr. Jones and Colin.
Awesome. What are you working on now? Like what can the Spanish audience expect this year?
Most definitely the highest priority is the block size war, because I believe that's one of the most important books, if not the second best, regarding Bitcoin. And titles that are close to the deadline, let's say to the end line, are Thank God for Bitcoin and Choose Life by Daniel Briggs. So it's good. It's coming along. We are becoming more efficient with time. We are adding more translators, passionate translators every time. We're becoming a thing, I believe.
Certainly seems like it. I have high hopes for the Spanish market. And last year, I think I felt like it really took off, and you've been doing wonderful work there. Thanks to you and everything else that you do in Konsensus organization. So let's just keep at it and keep developing.
Yeah. We just need more Nikos and more Gonzas, I guess.
Yeah. More Starfish. Yeah. Just, whatever your skill set is, I think you can be useful. If not in Konsensus organization, then you will find another organization. So, I mean, don't be shy. Like, be honest with yourself, who you are, what you're good at, what you like to do. And then just find projects that can support that, and you can support them. That's where you do your best work, and that's where you can be competitive. And that's kind of like what we see happening with all these Starfish organizations.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tell you a story about my country, because some people might be interested. And have you heard of Nigeria and how they banned people from acquiring more than $42? Was it something on those lines? I bet you read that tweet.
I don't remember that.
Well,
that sounds pretty bad.
Yeah. Governments and their regulations, In Argentina, sorry, the most egregious regulation that it's not so recent, but it's been a while. It involves people not being able to buy more than $200 every month. So if you want to save legally, you just, and if you if you abide by some other rules, but those are not really important, that they are only exceptions. You can only buy $200. So that's at most what you're going to save in dollars in Argentina legally. Of course, this is not how the market works. And we out of that policy, something arise, which is the blue dollar blue that we have here, which is, of course, the black market dollar, which has a different price as the official dollar. And usually it's around double, because that's the truth. The government wants you to believe that the dollar is let's say 100 pesos, but in reality it's 200. I think right now it's 380. I don't remember. I don't buy dollars. But yeah, most Argentinians buy dollars. The thing, the funny thing about Argentina is that we have different values for different kinds of US dollar. So if you want to use your credit card to pay for Netflix, let's say, you pay what is commonly known as let's say streaming dollar or Netflix dollar, which is the official dollar plus taxes that make it really similar to the blue dollar, Then there was one thing that recently Coldplay came to do some concerts in Argentina, and they also that created another dollar, which was popularly known as dollar Coldplay, which was like a tax for the people buying tickets to that concert. It's like different kind of dollars appear because they cannot really do it at the official rate because that's too cheap. But it's the way to compensate for that and to make it more similar to the real price, which is the blue dollar, so if you come to Argentina, I suggest that you will find something when you come to Argentina. You will find that everything is really cheap if you are from the US or maybe Europe. Well, if you do things right, it can be cheaper because you're probably using your credit card and that's using the official price of the dollar, and that's a lie, and they are stealing from you. You should find out how to get physical pesos for your dollars and get a serious, like a real price, like the illegal price, let's say it out loud, the black market price, so that you get the most out of your money. So yeah, I had some coworkers from the US, from a regular job, tell me that they came here and they didn't know all this, and they just wasted a lot of money because they didn't know, and they used their credit cards, and they didn't get the most of it. So yeah, I this is my PSA, my public service announcement. Just that.
That's amazing. I knew none of that. Like so basically they're forking the shitcoin dollar into different versions of.
Yeah, I mean,
and putting on a premium.
Yes, I mean, it's like their way to adapting to that egregious policy. It's like it's unsustainable, but they make, by adding more patches, they make it work, But even I believe what the consequences of this is that there are some people like buy some things or services that get benefited by certain dollars, when in reality we should all be doing the same, using the same dollar price, which is the black market one, But yeah, if they don't unban people from buying more than $200, that's not going to happen, and there's going to be a discrepancy between the official price and the real price. I'm really sorry if I didn't explain it well. I mean, if there's an Argentinian here, please correct me in the comments or whatever. But yeah, it's a mess. I think it's quite interesting though. It's like this will be really entertaining for Austrian economists because it's the market acting out of, like, it's the grass that grows through mortar. It's like it finds a way. It's an intrigued way. It's not the most efficient, but it's the way that you allowed it to grow, and that's how we survive,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like all these colors that you want to put on the money or the market, like black market, gray market, blue dollar, whatever, they're political constructs. And in reality, in true reality, there's only market. There's only one market. And there's actors that the market is comprised of. that act in their best interests in order to alleviate their felt uneasiness by taking action. And it's unstoppable. Like it doesn't matter what your credentials are, doesn't matter what your title is and how much you point your gun at people. People are going to find a way. A life is going to find a way, like in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, like, I believe it's all free markets in the sense of, if you don't really care about the law, you find a way, if it is worth it, if you analyze risks and the reward, you might find that not following the law, it's worth it. So yeah, that's the way the market found to some solution. That's a solution that the market found to some problem, And yeah, it's going back to safety, and it's really funny when I hear stories about Lebanon, because it's like, I can totally see my country in those stories. It's like I heard him talking about, once he was talking about how electricity was subsidized and how it will work during the day. They were on all day, but they would turn off during the night because it was impossible to meet the demand, But during the day, it was cheap and it was possible for the government to actually make it so that there was light on the streets. But yeah, it's like that, those silly things that arise from like very repressed markets, let's say. It's not like you could see it as yes, that's the outcome of government intervention. Yes, it's one way of doing it, but I also see that that's the market doing its best to survive. Sometimes it gets killed. It's like it gets totally ruined, you don't get anything. But most of the time I like seeing the beauty of how well the market works in spite of all the regulations and problems that we create by intervening with that process.
Yeah, that's well put. And like, look, it's not always the case that these regulators and these people who interject and bother us with their rules and regulations, it's not like they're necessarily evil or they have malintent or bad intentions. Oftentimes it's just gross incompetence and naivety, right? I mean, I know that Saifuddin is a proponent of monarchy over democracy, certainly myself as well. And I think one reason is that, I don't remember who said this, but it's really well put, that, a tyrant, if you have a tyrant, he rests every once in a while and stop oppressing you because he gets bored or tired. But a person who truly, from the goodness of their heart, from the bottom of their heart, believe that they are helping people, they will never leave you alone. So there will be regulation after regulation and intervention after intervention if they truly believe that that's what they're doing is helping people. And I think this is a even bigger problem. This naivety and incompetence that you would think that you can control the market, or that the audacity of thinking that you can overrule the market that is composed of countless individuals and different wants and needs. But I'm sure some people actually believe that. And those are the people that will never cease bothering you because they really think that they're helping you.
Yeah.
That's why educating about this free market principles and proper economic theory, which is Austrian economics, praxeology, first principles thinking, instead of just reacting and having these knee-jerk reactions to what, there's a fire, okay, now I'm going to put it out, and then, I'm going to fix this and put some tape and glue on it, and then something else blows up because you created pressure here, and the circus keeps going on, and all you have to do is leave the people alone.
Yeah, and then the arguments like, no, you wouldn't get it. It's too complex. Like the Keynesian economists say, it's like if you really study economic theory, I wouldn't say it's not that hard. I would just say don't try to make it complex when it isn't, But
I mean, economics is only complex if you think that you can control the markets.
Yes.
Like if that's when it gets complicated. If you accept the fact and the axiom that the markets, in fact, they are extremely complex, so much so that there's no computer or brain that could possibly be able to simulate it. If you accept that, then it becomes simple again. And that's Austrian economics.
Yes, you're right. That's a great way of describing it.
Great story. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, I was like, okay, I should learn some stats about my country, and then I was like, we have something called dollar Coldplay that must be put in the story,
Yeah, holy shit! How is that a thing? And how didn't I hear about that?
Yeah, it's like, and also dollar Qatar after the World Cup, because because it's like there's a dollar for credit card, and then if you exceed a certain amount, then you go towards you are in the dollar Qatar zone. It's like that tax brackets, And in the dollar Qatar zone, if you buy, it's called Qatar because it was the World Cup recently. The World Cup was held recently. And people Argentinians just wanted to go there. It doesn't matter if they had enough savings, they found a way. And it's a way to tax people that just wanted to use their credit cards and go there. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm getting some details wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't really. I'm not into saving in dollars, so I don't really know much. But I might drop in the comments a correction if I find something wrong with what I just said after the podcast is over, But
and any resources you can drop, and any links at all that will be helpful, we can just put in the description. I'm sure like this is really good material and something that you don't hear every day. So I'm sure some of the viewers are going to be interested in digging a little bit deeper in this. So if you have those, please provide.
Yeah, I will drop a link.
Awesome. Anything else to add?
No, I think that was it. That was the most interesting I can get.
You can get plenty interesting.
I mean, there was another thing, but it was an old thing that arose, like this example of the market arising, and is something a service women provided in Argentina due to a tax that existed. It's like there was something called the bachelor tax in Argentina. And this is something I didn't found because I was Argentinian. I found it on like Twitter and I call it international Twitter, not Argentinian Twitter. And I think it was in Wikipedia. It was called the bachelor tax. And as you may guess, it's like if you don't get married, you will get taxed, But how did that work? Because it's like they were the government back then were more comprehensive, let's say, of males, because it's not like getting married is easy for, let's say, incels or people not so beautiful, handsome. So they had a tiny exception in which they went, okay, if you at least try, we are not going to tax you, and it's amazing because it's like nowadays you would be just like, you get taxed for being a virgin, let's say. Fuck it. You don't get a girlfriend, you get taxed. But But back then it was like, no, it's okay if you try. So there were women who would sell their services as women that you would propose to and they would reject.
No, is that a real thing?
Yes, I mean, I found it in Wikipedia. I'm not that old, but if it's there, I can't believe that happening.
That's
I choose to
amazing.
believe. We have a saying in Argentina, we choose to believe. We don't have the facts sometimes, but we choose to believe.
Right. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. Like that's exactly the kind of government solution to a problem that never existed. That is, I find it completely believable. That's hilarious. That's what it is, at least.
Yeah, and it's nice seeing how government in a baby state will be like, you know what? You are right. We're not being like, we're not being coherent. It's like, we shouldn't tax you if you are trying your best, you know? So yes, let you try your best. And yeah, it's like that. Was it like, it's like an example of a policy that goes backwards, you know? They wanted, in some government wanted to reduce the amount of snakes that they were in the wild. So they would put a price on snake heads. And then, of course, snake ranches were created. It's like, okay, I'm going to breed snakes to get money. And that didn't solve the problem, you know? It's like, yeah, no.
Amazing. Amazing. And yeah, like that's a great example of adding complexity where complexity doesn't need to exist. Like, for example, the fact that, okay, we need to find a way to tax people more, right? So we come up with these elaborate schemes, they blow up. Then we come up with other schemes to cover up the blow up. And in the beginning, if you just accepted the axiom that stealing is wrong, you know, non-consensual confiscation of funds at the threat of violence is wrong, so you shouldn't do that at all. Again, things become much more simple. But no, once you go that complexity rabbit hole, it just adds complexity over complexity until it completely collapses.
Well, that was it for me. I don't have anything else.
All right. This has been the Starfish Cast. Let's start to wrap it up. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Gonzalo, once again to joining in and all the work that you do. My name is Nico. You can catch me on Twitter, Omnithin double N at the end. Check out Twitter, Konsensus N, and join our Telegram group, which is a public group, Konsensus Network. I guess that's the majority of it. Do you wanna share your Twitter profile, Cons?
It's also Gonan Edogawa. So yeah, that's it.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Nico. See you next time.